right, we are ready. Okay, so today we're going to talk about, first I want to introduce the paper to make sure it is clear to you what I'm trying to ask you for, because I have a weird way of assigning papers, so I just want to make sure you all understand that, and then we're going to talk about the book, but I'm going to answer hopefully your question. So I want to talk about the paper prompts. So, the way I assign a paper is a little different because I feel like I'm trying to build skills in this class and hopefully trying to do that through the way I ask you questions. And the skills that I want you to focus on for this paper is body paragraph writing. So I actually give you, and you did this for your immigration week, when you wrote an actual paragraph, it's the exact same outline, except I made you give me 3 examples within that with the analysis. In these 3 body paragraphs, you only need to give me 2 examples, okay? So the way I want you to do it is you're gonna pick one of the theses that I have listed below. If you are seriously wanting to write a different paper that I have not provided a thesis for you, I will allow you to write me an email with your thesis that you're hoping to write your paper on, and I will approve it. So you just need to make sure I'm okay with it, and you can write that paper instead if you're not feeling any of these theses that I have provided. So I'm totally okay with that, but I wanted to make it a little easier, and we didn't really practice thesis writing. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of the theses, and then you're going to just place that at the top of your page. No need to write an introductory paragraph. Okay? Sorry. And then you're going to actually do the exact outline that I have given you. So you'll do an intro sentence that talks about what that actual paragraph is going to talk about. Then you're going to do an example with a corresponding citation, and because your only source for this paper will be this book, the only thing that you will need to provide is a parentheses with the page number that you're getting that example from. Okay, you can use quotations if you like, but I strongly encourage, especially with a book like this, to paraphrase as well. Yes?
I have the Kindle edition with no page numbers.
Okay, then that's fine. If you have the Kindle edition with no page numbers, I will trust that you would use this book. Could you write, though, in your citations, because I'm going to be looking for it, it's in the rubric.
Okay.
How about, because in the Kindle editions, it says the percentage of the book, right?
Yeah, and it has like position number.
Okay, just give me whatever you have.
Okay.
Because if you looked at my rubric that I put up yesterday, I give 2 points for every citation. So I need to see that you've done something with that. Does that make sense? But that's totally fine.
Okay.
So then each example will have corresponding analysis. An easy way to kind of start your analysis is this example shows that, this demonstrates that, one of those things. So think in that way. You're going to be showing me how your example relates back and proves your thesis with your analysis. Does that make sense? And then you'll end each paragraph with a concluding sentence, right? So you're going to do 3 body paragraphs, no intro, no conclusion. Just the thesis at the top of the page. That's it. It's very clear how my points are given out. If you look at the rubric, I put that up last night under the women's suffrage module, and you can look at the how you're gonna turn it in on Canvas, and then I also have the rubric, and each of these gets a certain amount of points, and then I have an additional 15 points for writing style and grammar. Okay, so that equals 100 points. Cool. Questions about that specifically?
Okay, so
yes.
we don't need a header or nothing like that, just the thesis, right?
Just the thesis, no introductory paragraph, no concluding paragraph.
Okay.
So I'm working on building your skills in writing and body paragraphs for a history class, essentially. And the reason I give you this very stringent outline is because I feel like a lot of different disciplines require you to write in different ways. And I understand that most of the people in my classes are not necessarily history majors, so I want to be very clear what I'm asking you for and what I'm expecting from you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's weird. I do this a lot in my classes, and I've gotten some weird looks, but it tends to work out. And I think in the long run, it helps you to think about writing in a different way, which is kind of my goal in doing this. I actually learned this when I was in high school, this writing outline, and I've been using it ever since. And I've been in school for a long time, very long time. Okay? Questions about that? I'm going to scroll down and we're going to look at some of the theses that I have given you and some of the themes that come out of those, and then I want to ask you to just open up for questions that you have, okay? So the theses that I provided you really relate to a couple different things in the book. One being gender and how gender is perceived in this time period according to class typically, and how it's changing because of the war. Another being nationalism, another being the traumas that are caused by war, and one that I don't think is actually very prevalent in these theses, but if you choose to write about it, I think class, especially at the end of the book when she goes back and is working with the women as a domestic worker and she's cooking, class becomes a really important aspect because the working class have a different perspective of the war and how it provides them with jobs and therefore money. So they're pretty okay with the war compared to the middle and upper class girls that she was working with as an ambulance driver. So that's another thing you might want to look at. I want to open it up to you guys to have comments on the book that you think are important and will be helpful for this writing of this paper, and just questions you may have. And I also want to talk about one of the questions I asked you, but we can do that later, about the nationalism and citizenship, because I think that that isn't as obvious, but I think it's a really important part of the book that you kind of have to read between the lines, and I want you to know what that is when you go in to write your paper. So, anyone want to start with questions?
Very quick question.
Yes, please.
Probably
Quick question.
When the BF was introduced,
Yes.
there was like a whole thing about how her name was like a double entendre, some joke or something.
Yeah.
What was the joke there? It went over my head and I couldn't.
I
find
don't.
it.
Could you tell me you can't tell me the page. Could you, if you can find the passage and we can read it? I'm not remembering
You can
specifically.
Move on.
We'll move on and go back to that because that's. I think so speaking of double entendres and stuff, the sexuality in this book is interesting, and we could start with that if you want to, because it brings that up. So, what do we think about the sexuality in the book?
Of the women?
Yes.
Like I noticed how when they were in like Tosh, how she talked and stuff, and how she was like open about sexuality and everything. But I forgot which character it was. Like they were so used to women, not voicing.
BF probably wasn't it?
Yeah.
BF that was like really
Yeah.
uncomfortable with Tasha's.
Like even her foul language or just talking about sex in general, it was like
Yeah.
a bad thing for a woman to say, especially in that time. So
Absolutely.
it changed. Like they said that when they went back, people might be so surprised at their language or how they talk and everything like that.
Right, so their femininity was previously attached to this, we don't speak about sex, we don't speak in foul language, right? And the war was kind of tarnishing that and changing that for some of the women like Tosh specifically.
In the
who were-
haircut.
Yeah, cutting their hair, absolutely. Because they're thinking like, what's the point? Like we're going through all these terrible things, why do we need to keep up with this like feminine ideal that is a construction of society that actually has nothing to do with us? Does that make sense? Absolutely. What about other, yes, do you have it?
The particular quote is in chapter 1, like probably.
Can you read it?
Or something. It says, Tosh christened her the BF, but we are quite convinced that although flattered at being on nickname level with the niece of an earl, she hasn't the vaguest notion that the cryptic letters signify anything other than her own initials, Bertina Farmer. That's like all the context that's given that it means something else, but I couldn't figure
I
out
don't
what
know
it
what-
actually means.
Let me think about it. I'm trying to think of like, does anyone have an idea of what BF could be?
Wait, can you say it again?
Didn't the BF stand for like fish something?
Yeah.
Maybe
It was what's her last name?
Bertina Farmer.
oh, bitch.
Yeah, bitch
Okay,
farm.
so they put okay.
Okay.
And that's a
that's
thank
what
you.
I got.
No, I think you're correct.
Because they go on to talk about like them calling each other like.
Yeah, like it was a secret insult.
Right.
It was a secret insult.
But also
they were
I kind
laughing behind her.
right, and I like that BF though was like, ooh, I have the nickname from a granddaughter of an earl or whatever she is. So
Yeah.
she's still like happy because Tosh is tied to this royalty, right?
Right.
And so BF is the like this is gonna be a bad analogy, but it just popped in my head. She's the Charlotte of the Sex and the City group. right? She is that is a terrible analogy, so I apologize for doing that. But she's like the one that wants to stay. She's the one who also is always insisting upon the fact that we have to do our bit, right? She is the quintessential what those mothers that like Smithy's mom wanted their daughters to be.
I thought that was especially evident in the letter that she sent to Smithy when she was at home.
Oh.
She's talking about,
Tasha's death.
poor little Todd, you know,
And we
just,
were such good friends.
yeah, just, I was,
A little.
There's sarcasm. I thought it was sarcastic.
I know. I don't think she's being sarcastic at all. Actually, I think she was really wanting
Well,
to
like
be
poor
connected.
thing, like yeah, she wanted to be,
Tosh.
but she wasn't really.
No, exactly. So she, yeah, in
Yeah.
that way she's sarcastic, but she's
Yeah.
trying to come off as totally. She's not trying to show off being sarcastic, but she is definitely not portraying the truth. And the worst part of that whole thing at the end, where she's like, "P.S. I also am really sad about Bug." So sad, right? Absolutely. Okay, so what else about sexuality? Any other characters that we get to kind of get a glimpse into their sexuality?
skinny.
Skinny, yes. Okay, so what's Skinny got going on?
Is she a lesbian?
She's
Yeah, she's
absolutely a
absolutely.
lesbian. Yes. Skinny's a lesbian, and Tosh kind of outs her.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
Skinny gets real mad about it, right?
Blame her in that.
Right. And the interesting thing is that, so this is definitely a faux pas, right? It's not what women want to be portrayed as at this moment. Especially, I mean, we have to think about sexuality, and this is in the teens, so it's just a faux, it's, you know, you do not want to be accused of that, but she's definitely a lesbian. So lesbians are existing in this time period. Shocking, I know. And they are having relations, and it's actually interesting because this situation would allow for those sorts of relationships to kind of happen, right? They're all living together, they're all sleeping in the same houses or wherever they are, the bunks or whatever. I mean, this is a situation that would definitely allow for that. Anyone else's sexuality that you can think of? How about Smithy's sister?
Oh,
Trix.
yeah, she
Trix.
sleeps with like 3 people.
And she's
Yeah.
pregnant, right? And
Yeah.
she doesn't know who the father is, right?
So she goes back to work. Helen goes back to work to pay for it.
Right, and Smithy gets the money to pay for her to have an abortion, correct? Yes, absolutely. And so that sexuality would be deemed very promiscuous at this time. I think even society today would probably deem her quite promiscuous, right? But so it's interesting to think about how far or how little we've changed in our social constructions of sexuality. But what is Trix's kind of justification to Smithy? Because Smithy's kind of shocked that this is happening because she thinks of her as her sweet little sister, right? And now Trix is having a baby with somebody she can't pinpoint who it is, right? What's her justification for it? Does anyone remember?
Basically like, we could die in time, so.
Yeah,
why
why?
hold back?
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically like, well, we're basically living in this terrible, horrifying situation. We could die today, we could die tomorrow, we could die the next day, nobody knows. People are dying left and right. At one point she says it's interesting because one day you're like sleeping with somebody and then the next day they're dead. And so she's kind of like, I don't even care anymore, right? What's the point of keeping up with these quintessential, like, what you're supposed to be in society when you're dealing with such trauma, right? Absolutely. How about Smithy's sexuality? What happens? I mean, she has an instance where do we think she sleeps with that guy or not? Do you know what I'm talking about? What scene I'm talking about?
Yes, I think because she said they woke up together, right?
Yeah, I
I
think
think
they
they
stayed
did,
together.
without
And she
question.
also, he kind of mentions like, you're my first woman I've ever really truly loved.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking
I
about
was
the guy.
thinking-
Not Roy.
Not him,
Not Roy.
the one before that on the front, when they went to the concert.
Yeah, him.
Yeah,
I don't remember his name, but.
yeah, what was his name? Oh, Robin. He
Robin,
asked
yeah.
her to call him Robin, which is
Yeah.
interesting because it makes you think like maybe he's using a fake name or something, the way she worded it. But yes, so Smithy's also exploring her sexuality in a similar way. And just to kind of wrap up on like love issues or issues of, what do we think